Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Getting Back Up with me, Anthony Agogo. And today I'm in Media City, Salford, up north in England after filming for the BBC all day. I was on Richard Osman's House of Games, that's going to air later this year. Had so much fun. But anyway, this podcast isn't about me. This podcast is for you, where I talk to wonderful people, amazing people, people that have done great things in both their life and or career, but only after suffering massive setback and adversity. This weekly podcast right here, is your weekly dose of hope and inspiration to help you get back up the metaphorical canvas and crack on with your dreams, no matter how hard you've been hit, no matter what has put you on the seat of your pants. This weekly podcast is for you to get back up and go after your dreams.
And I dump a lot of bottles to hide the evidence on the way into work. And there are bushes in our village that still jingle in the wind, I'm pretty sure. I was drink driving all the time. She'd stop me driving with the kids. And I am ashamed of that, but it's true, that's what I did. And no normal person would do that deliberately, but I did.
Did you like yourself back then?
Looking back now, it's like looking at someone else. So I tell these stories with a certain amount of detachment because I'm not sure I believe that it was me. And whether that's something in my mind that's changed, I look back and it is a different person, and I can't believe the stuff I did. I can't believe the danger I put my kids in. I can't believe the danger I put everyone else in.
Today I welcome on a very dear friend of mine, Dr. Simon Bunting. Simon is a great mate, but he's also my dentist, and he's a truly inspiring man. Now, we talk about two massive pieces of adversity in Simon's life. The first one, we talk about his alcoholism. Simon is an alcoholic, and we talk all about it. This is fascinating, and I want to actually take this time to say, Simon, thank you so much for being so honest and open and brave. You're going to be awe-inspired by some of the things he talks about, just as I was and I am every time I hear his story. He talks about the suffering and setbacks that he and his family faced due to him being an alcoholic. And also we talk about another massive piece of adversity Simon was diagnosed with at the back end of last year. Simon was diagnosed with cancer, and we talk about that. And actually, when we spoke on a Friday. That was his last quote-unquote day off before going back to work on the Monday after many months off following his surgery and the cancer diagnosis. He's still here. He's living. He's breathing. He's back on his bike. He's an absolute legend. Simon, I bloody love you, mate. Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to love this podcast. So, without further ado, let's get stuck in. Simon Bunting. Wow, I've been looking forward to this one, mate. I really have been looking forward to this podcast. And we're going to talk about a lot of stuff the next hour or so. And I'm going to ask a lot of questions. But the first question I want to ask you, and is the most important question I'm going to ask, I believe. And I want your honesty, your honest answer. How the bloody hell are you, mate?
I'm very good, actually. I feel blessed at the moment. It's been a difficult year last year, and so I'm hoping this year is not going to throw quite so much rubbish at me. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm physically. We'll get back to that. I'm physically pretty much fully recovered, and been out biking this morning for a long bike with Karen. So that always makes you feel a bit better. I'm back to work officially next week. I'm just going back 3 days a week. I'm too old to be doing 5 days a week anyway now. So that's kind of, as you'll find out, what happened has I think speeded up my dive into retirement. So I'm gonna go 3 days a week for a few years and see what happens.
Good, mate. I'm glad. You look fantastic, mate. You look unbelievable. And obviously we're in January 2024. Last year is just gone. I've seen on social media people have been saying, "Oh, 2023 was really rubbish. It was really shit. Can't wait to get into the new year." And we all go through our stuff. We all have our shit. Like, I've been through my own certain amount of shit in 2023. And it's not until you kind of take a step back and you hear somebody else's story, and you've gone through so much in just last year alone. And we're going to talk all about that. We're going to talk about what you've recovered from in the coming hour. But this podcast called Getting Back Up, where I talk to inspiring people. And Simon, you really are an inspiring person to me. We've become great friends over the last 12 years now, getting to 12 years. And I'm really keen to do this. One, for me, for my own growth, my own healing process from the shit that I've been through in my life. And I know your story will touch so many people. And I want to say thank you for coming on and opening up your wounds and sharing your life with me and the Getting Back Up listeners and watchers. So for those that don't know you, who are you and why are we talking today?
Well, my name's Simon. I'm a local dentist, which is how I initially got to know you. I grew up in
That's
Birmingham.
why we met. We met at the Olympic Games. We actually we
Yes,
met
yeah, yeah, we did.
at the Olympics, which we'll come on to later. But yes, sir. Sorry, as you were, sir.
And I am a recovering alcoholic, and I've been sober for nearly 23 years now. But my descent into the sort of 24-hour hell of chronic alcoholism was quite rapid and quite destructive. And it's a miracle, a series of many miracles, really, that I kind of pulled out, and probably mostly down to the strength of my wife, who stuck by me when many would have cut me adrift, really, and quite deservedly so. And I think for the motivation factor was my family and my kids, who thankfully they're all kind of young adults now. None of them remember me drinking, and my youngest has never seen me drink, because she was conceived and born after I'd attained sobriety. So that she's a little miracle, because there was no way Karen was going to bring another child into the world that I had created around my drinking. So yeah, so mostly my story is about what happened. Again, what made me stop? I'm still not convinced I know the answer to that, and how I have learned to live and enjoy being sober. In a nutshell, and how I got the tools to face life and life's challenges without a drink, or without needing to drink as well. So on a daily basis, I continue to do that, and with the help of many inspiring people at Alcoholics Anonymous, that's what I continue to do.
That's amazing. I got tingles throughout. I say a lot on this. You might hear me say. You probably will hear me say it in this conversation that I've got tingles. I've got tingles. I get goosebumps hearing inspiring stuff, and I had tingles from the back of my spine to my fingertips just then, as you were saying that. Especially when you spoke about Maddie the miracle, your youngest of your three amazing children. Um, we're gonna deep dive into that. I've seen and heard you talk about some of the experiences that you went through and some of the things you went through, and I want to hear about some of that stuff. But last year, 2023, I mentioned a minute ago, we all it seems like a lot of people went through some stuff in 2023 because that's life, and life continuously throws punches at us for us to bob and weave and slip and duck, and occasionally they land on the chin, and we get knocked down. And you had a big 2023. Can you talk about what you went through and what you're only months from going through?
Yeah, well, it was let's see, September. I've been on holidays to Portugal in sort of June, July, and then went to Latitude Festival in end of July. And just after that, I noticed a bit of blood in my poo, just a couple of times. And I did that thing that most men do, and kind of were mulled it over, and then thought, no, that's probably nothing. It's probably chili or tomato juice. And I was still mulling it over when my middle daughter Emily asked me to get some paracetamol from Tesco's. So I went to get some. They'd run out, so I was hunting around in Tesco's, and I noticed that they sold a fecal immunological test, which is the blood in poo test. And I'd done one last year, because they send you one when you get to a certain age, and that had come back negative. So I thought, oh, that's fine. I'll just do one of those and it will be fine. So I took one of those. It's like a COVID test, gives you an instant result, and that came back positive. So I thought, oh, I'll phone the doctor the next day. And I phoned the doctor, and I was like number 27 in the queue. And I thought, oh, Christ, can I be bothered? But I just emailed them. I said, I've done this test and it came back positive. And I thought they'll get back to me in about 2, 3 weeks or so. They phoned up that afternoon and said, you've got an appointment this afternoon, come in. So I went in, they gave me another test to do and sent me for bloods. Their test came back positive. The bloods were actually okay, but they phoned me up and said, we've referred you to the lower GI clinic. And I've got lots of friends who are doctors, so I sort of phoned up and said, what outcome do I need? And they said, you need a colonoscopy. So the lower GI clinic phoned me up and they said, we don't actually need to see you, you just need a colonoscopy. So I booked that in and they'd got a cancellation. So that was the following week. And at this point, I hadn't told Karen any of this because her mum was quite ill and she'd had a couple of falls and she'd just broken her knee and then she'd got some gut problems, and she was going through his investigations and they thought she probably had some sort of cancer. So I didn't want to mention it to Karen, but we were due to go swimming in Fritton Lake um, in the morning, and I was just waiting until the kids had left because Emily had got a week-long job interview, so I didn't really want to worry them about it. And Karen says, "Should we go swimming?" I said, "I can't really because I've just taken a load of laxatives and a load of prep." She says, "What's that for?" So I've got a colonoscopy. Now Karen's a glass half empty sort of person, so she immediately assumed that there was something wrong. I actually thought it'd just be an infection or something. Anyway, I went the next day to have the colonoscopy, and I didn't bother any sedation because I wanted to see it. And after introducing himself, didn't buy me a drink, shoved the camera straight up, and he went straight to this ulcer, which if I'd seen it in the mouth, I would have thought that's mouth cancer, that's squamous cell carcinoma or something. So I instantly kind of knew what this was. He then spent 45 minutes, as far as I can work out, trying to find my G spot. And then, in fact, just in case I'd missed the hint of this massive ulcer and looking like cancer, he asked the consultant to come in, and the consultant said, "Yeah, CT, MRI." So I kind of knew at this point. I had 50 minutes notice on Karen, and he came to see me afterwards and said, "Yeah, we need to have a chat." So I thought, do you want your wife to be present? I thought, well, she'd better be because she'll ask all the questions I'll forget. So I texted her and said, "Oh, yeah, yeah, just come pick me up." So she then texted me, said, "I'm here." I said, "Yeah, they want to have a chat." So at this point, she knows that I've got cancer. I know I've got cancer. And we walk into I think they call it the delivering bad news room. And we walked in. There's Mr. Veltura and a Macmillan cancer nurse with loads of books sitting there, just in case I've missed any of the massive hints. And when people tell you they've got cancer, they always put their head to the side and go, yeah, they'll give you a little look. Anyway, because we're English, all four of us sitting around knowing that I've got cancer, he said, "So Simon, you're a practicing dentist." And we talked for 5 minutes about dentistry, about the fact that our kids went to school together and blah blah blah. And they said, "Yeah, by the way, you've got cancer. We've done some biopsies. See you in 2 weeks." Came back 2 weeks later, it was confirmed, and then I was booked for surgery in October, and they took a large section of my bowel out. And actually, going back to the point where he said it, and this comes into sort of attitude towards things, I was a little bit detached. But the one thing I asked, Karen asked all the sensible questions. I said, "Look, what can I do to help you with the surgery?" And he said, "If you're cycling 10 miles a day at the moment, cycle 30." So that's what I did for 3 weeks before the surgery. I worked really hard on my fitness, my diet. I dropped sort of 3/4 of a stone. Which they got worried about actually. I'm the only person I know to have cancer without any unexpected weight loss. There's no sort of benefit there. But then I was on it and on the diet and lost some weight. I bought one of those breathing things to improve my lung capacity. And so I was pretty fit by the time I got to have the surgery. And they said, "You'll be in 6 or 7 days." And I said, "What's the quickest someone's got out?" And they said 3 days. And I said, "Okay, I'm going to try for that." Anyway, surgery went well. It was a 7-hour operation. They took a large section of my bowel out. I didn't have to have a bag, which was a bonus, but I'd sort of I'd accepted the fact that I was going to have a bag, and thought, do you know what? If I do, I'm just going to be that in your face with it, and I'm just going to carry on and make the most of what I can, and not treat it as a disability if that's what it takes for me to live. And also, my daughter has Crohn's, and she was told that she might have to have a bag, and she accepted that with a great stoicism. So I thought I can do no less, really. But as it was, they managed to sew me back together. Um, I was in hospital for 3 days, and I was really worried about pain relief because they give you lots of morphine and stuff. And so I said before I didn't really want morphine if I could help it. And obviously during the operation they fill you full of opioids and stuff. And I got up the next morning, and I got out of bed and I went for a walk and everything. And I took a picture of myself because I was really proud that I was out of bed and I thought I looked wonderful. And I posted it to people at work and stuff like that. And I was obviously still off my tits because I looked at the photo about 3, 4 days later and it was awful. I looked awful. Anyway, the physios turned up with a load of in bed exercises for me to do, and I said, "Well, I've been up and out anyway. I've been to the toilet anyway." And I got out within 3 days, which was great. And I have to say, I mean, the system is clearly a bit broken, the NHS, but the people in there were wonderful, and I. I had the most wonderful care, and everyone's too busy really, but they were brilliant, and they've sort of fixed me up. I was back out on the bike within 2 weeks. Karen went out for a run. I didn't tell her. I sort of hung around till she'd gone out, and then I quickly got changed, got on the bike, and I overtook her. About 10 minutes later, what the fuck are you doing out here? Because I knew she'd have told me off if I'd said I was going to. But I got back out on the bike, and I would say now, pretty much 95% fully recovered. I have to be careful what I eat. On a bad day, I have to go to the toilet quite a lot. They took a piece of my rectum away, which is the bit where you store poo. So I sometimes when I have to go, I have to go. But apart from that, I'm pretty much back to normal. And a couple of my friends, I think you get to 58 and you'll find your friends start getting ill. A couple of my friends, one has a leukemia and one had a load of blood clots. And I feel blessed actually, because my experience compared to what some of them have been going through is pretty minor. I had 3 months off work, um, which was wonderful because I haven't had any time off work for like 25 years, and actually really enjoyed it. Went to the beach walking the dog, spent loads of time with Karen, and it's been really good. So I think it's done me a lot of good having a break and having time to reassess what's important in life, not get so stressed about work. And so far that's working. I went back a couple of days ago, but I said I'm just doing 3 days a week, which is marvelous. But yeah, I feel blessed really, and I think the only thing you can change is your attitude towards things. And so I after about 2 hours of being a bit detached and then realizing and admitting that I was scared, I then thought, well, okay, that's reasonable. Why wouldn't you be scared? And then I set that aside. And then I thought, well, what can I control? And I couldn't control the outcome. I couldn't control the level of care. I just had to assume that I was in the best hands that I could be, which it turns out I was. Who knew the James Paget which is the hospital near us, is a specialist hospital for bowel stuff. So yeah, I couldn't have, happenstance, whatever. It all turned out brilliantly. And so actually, you kind of turn this around and think I'm lucky because if I hadn't done anything about the blood in my poo, um, then the problem with bowel cancer is you don't really get any symptoms until you get a blockage, and by then it's kind of too late. And so they also took loads of lymph nodes out, and they came back a few weeks later as all clear. So I didn't even need any chemo, don't need any radiotherapy. So I'm pretty much good as new. I'm going to have CT scan every year and a colonoscopy every year, just to check on things. But no, I feel blessed that I sort of managed to do it. And I've been telling everyone you can get these tests in Tesco. Please do them because it's you can get them on Amazon. They're about £2 each, and very simple to do. So yeah, I feel blessed.
Well, mate, there's so much in that. There is so much in that. Wow. I feel emotional. I feel emotional. And I think, you can listen to you talk, you can hear why. We were texting the whole way through of you told me, and when you told me, mate, that like I was in my little bedroom here in Atlanta, and like when you text me, I was like, it really hit me. It really, honestly, I really like, you get one of those texts that you don't think you're gonna get, and we check in with each other all the time, and but just about stuff and life and your kids and wrestling or whatever. And I thought, oh, Simon's texted me, be one of those texts. And then I read it and I thought, huh? I do like a cartoon, kind of like shake and read it again, and And then we were texting quite a bit over that time, and I thought if anybody's gonna get this, it's picked with the wrong person because you're so bullish and so headstrong and so resilient. And the way you spoke then, I mean, it's just like people can take so many lessons away from that monologue you just spoke about. And yeah, wow, wow, man, you're such an, as I said a minute ago, you're such an inspiring man, such an inspiring person, and you give your flowers to the people that deserve them, i.e., your kids, i.e., your wife, and well, just thank you so much for coming in and sharing that.
And actually, just the sort of caveat to that is that my mother-in-law, Karen's mum, was diagnosed the same week as me with gallbladder cancer with metastases, and unfortunately, she didn't make it. She died 3 weeks after being diagnosed, and so Karen was coming into the hospital to see me and to see her mum. So I think it's probably worse for the family members, to be honest, because once I got my head around it, it was pretty much okay. Well, this will be fine. I remember saying to you that like, the prognosis was pretty good for bowel cancer if they catch it early, but I also said, even if it wasn't, I'd still bet on myself. And I think you were the same. You see, yeah, of course I would as well. So yeah, it's I think catching it early is the thing, and I think it is harder on the people waiting because, like, Karen had to wait while I had the operation, and I was in theatre like 7 hours and probably in pre-op for an hour or so. Whereas I was completely unaware of that. I just woke up and was off my face, when I woke up at 5:30 in the afternoon. So yeah, it's been interesting. And it turns out that my experience with AA has given me the tools to deal with these kind of things without getting poor me another kind of thing, or feeling sorry for myself, or going into a sort of spiral of depression. And so I think positive mental attitude helps in most things, but certainly in this as well. And I was determined to get well and be as well as I could.
Mate, you're a strong man. You're an unbelievably strong individual. However, your wife, goodness me, Karen, a whole different level. Going to the hospital to see you and the mum. You hear my voice, I was breaking. I get full emotional. Going to the hospital to see you and her mum at the same time, like dealing with you, her being diagnosed with cancer, and you at the same time, you know, being a parent to three children, well, big kids, grown up children. Goodness me, poor woman. But yeah, I'm just so glad you made it, and I'm commiserations for her mum for not, but sort of consolation. Well, you know what I mean. um, wow, just what a crazy 2023. What in that moment you said you were scared. Obviously scared of not being here now or in next year. What are those thoughts or feelings like? Like, and how do you detach yourself from something so catastrophic?
Well, I think my default setting is denial. When something happens, if I'm worried about the kids, I just deny it and think, no, no, they're fine. And I have to realize that that is my default setting and then overcome it. So my first reaction was it was a little bit like I was watching myself deal with something. And we went for a walk on Galston Seafront. It was a lovely day, and we were sort of both a bit shell shocked, and we sort of sat down and kind of had their "well, this is it" moment. And Karen said, "You better not fucking die on me." And I said, "Okay, I won't." And then I sort of had a word with myself and just literally acknowledged the fact that I was scared, and there was also nothing I could do about that, and dwelling on it wouldn't be helpful. So I managed to put it aside, and literally I've learned through the program of AA that I can't change people, places, or things. I can only adjust my attitude to them, and so that's what I did. And for the first time, I was really aware of this program of recovery that I've been of giving me the tools that really enabled me to work, and I was able to let go of things that I couldn't control, like the fear. Um, so yeah, I have AA to thank for that, but and it sort of helped, and I only got scared again when I went into the pre-op when they were preparing me for the anaesthetic, because the only other time I had anaesthetic was when I had a impacted tooth, and they kind of said they put something in the back of my hand and went, yeah, count to 10 backwards, and then I woke up half an hour later and was fine. They were prepping me for about an hour, putting spinals in and doing all sorts of stuff, so I had quite a long time to think about it. um so yeah, but that's again, you accept the fact that of course you're going to be scared about it. And within a day or so I was cracking jokes about having cancer, and and milking it a little bit in a comedy sort of way, saying, "No, you can't say it to me. I've got cancer." And
I
and
can't.
to a certain in a certain sense of the thing, when you've got cancer, it is all about you, and I'm very selfish in that, and I love it being all about me. So that's that's quite people are very kind, and a lot of people don't know what to say. Actually, it's a bit like grief; they don't really know how to address it. But I think it helped um, my careless attitude towards it. I think, and the fact that I knew I was going to get better. So yeah, it was an interesting journey.
When you say you knew you were going to get better and you were driven, you were like you weren't gonna like die from this. What was your inspiration, your muse? Was it Karen? Was it the kids?
Yeah, it's Karen and the kids. No, I wasn't. I found out I'm not. I found out I'm not particularly scared of dying. Actually, I don't want to. And yeah, I didn't want to leave the kids and I'm having too much fun enjoying life and being with the kids and watching them grow into such wonderful people. That I didn't want to. Yeah, I didn't want to leave them. And that was my driving factor, is that I've got a very strong family around me, who I love dearly, and that was my motivation. I think that's always been my motivation. That's what got me well initially. So yeah, there was no choice really. I was gonna, and also you can't change what's going to happen, so you may as well bank on the positive side. Because if I'm wrong, it ain't going to matter. I ain't going to know about it. So yeah, that was why.
In tough times, how important is it to be positive, to try to no matter how hard it is to remain positive?
I think I think it's probably one of the most important things, because it's the only thing. It's like I said when I asked the surgeon, "What can I do?" and he said, "Get as fit as you can," and I did that. The only other thing I could do was to remain positive. And I think if you remain positive, um, it also, I think it affects people around you as well. So like I was in a very busy ward, and there were some people in there who were less than complimentary, who moaned all the time at the poor staff, saying they weren't getting told everything. And I listened to conversations, and I'm thinking, he's just told you exactly what is going to happen, and you're just not listening. And I think you get what you're given as well. So I remained really positive, and it's actually easier to remain polite and positive when other people around you are being rude. So I was completely positive, completely as helpful as I could be to the staff, and you get that back as well. So I think they kind of they pick up on that, and they're nicer to you, or it seemed to me that they were nicer to me. And so I think as well as being practical, if you're positive, people like being around. There are people in life who are radiators, who radiate positivity, and people love being around those. And there are people in life who are drains, and it's very difficult to be around someone who's draining or negative the whole time, because I think your instinct is to try and fix them or help them, and you can never do that, because you try and try and try, and then they go, "Yeah, I didn't think that'd work," and you feel deflated. So you have to sort of separate yourself from negative people if you can, or not separate yourself, but detach and say, "Okay, I can't practically help that, so I'm not going to," and to not engage as well with someone who is a professional victim. And so I'm mindful that I try not to be that person, and try and just be positive, because I think it makes a big difference.
Professional victim. I like that. I like that terminology. 'Cause you get it a lot. Then you get, and you're right. Right. And I remember there's a period in my life, and you know this, like for 3 years, I was a professional victim. Of why me? Why me? Why is my eye bad? Why can't I fight? Why is that person who I'm better than, who I've beaten? Why is he now world champion and a multimillionaire? And I had to sell my car and ride the bus. Like why? Right? And I was attracting all this negative energy to myself. I was just being so negative. And don't get me wrong, I had some unfortunate things happen to me. Um, but I was just was. Do you know? You text me once. You said to me, "Hey, come to an AA meeting with me." And I was in London at the time. And if I was in Lowestoft, I would have 100% would have, because some of the things you spoke about, which you're going to I want to talk more about this as well, the AA stuff. Like that mindset that you've developed, the resilient, like stoic mindset that you kind of like conditioned over, when you go. I wish I had that back then. I didn't have it. I couldn't see it. I was so full of self pity, and I think you're right, mate. It's not until you realize that there's a great big world out there, and maybe you're not so hard done. And you mentioned it yourself, actually. Your two friends that are going through a tough time right now. Like you've gone. when you compare yourself to other people, they're in a worse position. Like you can't help but feel grateful. Is where you're kind of at. Last cancer question. So I think you spoke so eloquently about the whole process. Unless there's anything else you want to say, and you kind of already answered it anyway. But like they say, 1 in 2 people kind of will get cancer in their lives. What advice can you give to those um, that do sit in there? And you're obviously, because of you're a medical professional, you're a dentist, and you've got a lot of friends that are doctors. You kind of knew as soon as you saw the sarcoma, you knew what it was. For those that are oblivious to it, and you mentioned like the doctors, they done a very English thing by talking, kind of skirted around it, and then kind of dropped it in conversation. For those that when they drop it in, it hits them like a ton of bricks with no idea. What kind of message can you say to those people? What kind of advice can you give to them?
Well, cancer is a very scary word, and so I've tried to do my best to um, destigmatize that. Yes, 1 in 2 people are going to get cancer, um, but that's not the death sentence it used to be. Like mine, honestly, probably I could afford if I'd had to, I probably could have gone back to work within 6 weeks of having the operation. I'm not saying it would have been easy, but if I'd had to, I could have done it. So, in fact, there are people who have a lot less serious things who have a lot more time off than that. So, actually, if you have your appendix out, okay, it was a bit more serious operation than that, but not much. Just technically slightly more difficult and a bigger scar and stuff like that. But actually, to just one, don't be well. No, you of course be scared, but it's not the death sentence it used to be. Get some advice. There's lots of help out there. The Macmillan Cancer Nurses, they give you loads of leaflets, and I had my support network of AA and my family around that I could use, so I didn't feel I needed to do that. But if you need this sort of, there are loads of counselling groups, and I was a when I was up until I was about 32, 33. I never believed that talking about anything could fix anything. It's just rubbish. I was brought up to basically brush everything under the carpet and ignore it, especially emotions. You can't deal with those. So whereas now I'm a great believer in talking about stuff will do nothing but help. So there are plenty of Macmillan Cancer Nurses are wonderful. The support I was offered so much support with James Paget. They offered me all this physical stuff. They offered to to pay for gym memberships and stuff. And I said, well, there isn't any gyms that I'm not a member of around here anyway. So that so there was nothing they could do. But if I'd needed to do that, they would have started a physical program. There's so much help out there. If you're not, and the other thing is, if you think you've got symptoms, just get them checked out. Because if it's nothing, you're worrying about nothing, and worrying about stuff isn't great for your life. You don't sleep. If you don't sleep, your immune system, and also the more you worry about stuff, the more it's almost likely to become a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you don't sleep, your immune system gets depressed, and then you're going to pick up something, or these whatever's going to get you will get you sooner. So yeah, just address any symptoms you've got, get it checked out. Tesco's have got so many tests you can buy now: thyroid, chlamydia, HIV. You can buy all these tests now in Tesco's, or online. There's loads of little tests you can do. So for God's sake, don't ignore symptoms. And so I've had my prostate risk assessment done 2 or 3 times now, and actually sometimes it annoys me a little bit with all the advertising out there about how prostate's going to get 1 in 8 men. I phoned up the doctor and said I want my prostate risk assessment. They went, "Why?" I said, "Well, because I'm a male over 55." "Well, you had one a couple of years ago." "Yeah, I want another one." And they were, "Have you got any symptoms?" And I went, "Okay, if I say yes, will I get a test?" And they went, "Yes." I said, "Yeah, okay. I pee more frequently than I used to." So it annoys me that you have to fight for it, but yeah, just get yourself tested, and don't be afraid to get it checked, because the earlier you get it, you deal with it, the better the prognosis.
Yeah. No, thank you, man. Appreciate that. You mentioned earlier that you are a recovering alcoholic. That has become that's a large part of you, isn't it? And you're not afraid to talk about it quite openly. You use lessons you've gone through to help other people, which I think is unbelievably inspiring and powerful. So thank you for that. Alcoholism. I recently had a guy on the podcast called Paul Bogey. It's a tremendous one of my favorite podcasts I've done so far. It's a really good one. He was addicted to heroin, and he taught me so much. In our conversation, he taught me so much about addiction and and him going through it. Horrible, what a horrible disease. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know where to start. I've never been addicted to anything, so I don't think anyway. But like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. Also, I'm genuinely inquisitive. I want to learn, but something like this. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Can you talk to us about that, about your life and alcohol?
So yeah, I grew up in Birmingham. Had a very happy childhood. My parents worked all the time, and so I had like a front door key at 7. But that wasn't unusual amongst my peers. We all sort of were left to get on with stuff. But I had loads of friends at school. I had a really happy childhood. We were relatively well off. I didn't really want for anything, and so sometimes when I go to AA, people will share their story, and at the end of it, you go, "Fuck me, I'd drink if I was you." That wasn't really, that wasn't me. I wasn't abused. I wasn't bullied. I fitted in. I had lots of friends. I love drinking, and my parents were big fans of the French, and we always used to go to France. So I had alcohol freely available to me from a fairly young age. And I'm not saying that made a difference. I think a lot of my cousins are alcoholic or addicts. I think my grandfather was an alcoholic, and I think there's a certain genetic element to it.
Is there an element to it? Is it
Well, I think statistically, 50% of the kids of alcoholics become alcoholic.
is that genetic as well? Like because you see it, you're aware, or a bit of both,
Yeah, I think there is a nature nurture thing there. I'm hoping it's more of a nurture thing, and that the kids aren't going to become that. But I think I think that there is probably a predisposition to genetic predisposition to addiction or to substance abuse or whatever. And if you're predisposed to being an alcoholic and you go to Guy's Hospital Dental School in the 80s, which was a den of hedonism, and you play rugby there, and you're a DJ, and you get paid for going to the all the discos and stuff, and you get free drinks, which is what I did. I was like a boy in a sweet shop. Then you're going to be in trouble. I mean, I drank alcoholics definitely at college, but then so did most people. I just didn't really stop. So my life was pretty good. You can sum up most people's journey in alcoholism in 3 words, which is fun with problems. But I'll go into sort of more specific detail. So, I drank a lot at college. I always loved drinking, and eventually I lost control of it. I would say I went from a very heavy social drinker in 1998 to an end stage 24-hour day drinking alcoholic in 2001, which is when I stopped. And the progression it's insidious. You don't wake up and suddenly you start drinking 24 hours a day. You look back and there's a period where you weren't, and then suddenly you are. Um, so I drank heavily. I used to the best place to hide a tree is in a forest. So, and this wasn't deliberate. So my behaviour, basically, whenever we went out with friends or whatever, I would always be the centre of mayhem and making everyone drink. So my whole college life was one massive drinking game, basically, and I would be the centre of making everyone else get drunk. And looking back, the reason is that when you go to a wedding or whatever, you're not the one that conversation stops when you come down for breakfast in the morning, because I've managed to get a few people more drunk than me, and I'm more used to it. And that wasn't a deliberate tactic. It's just something I realised looking back that that's what I've done. And so people say, when were you alcoholic? Well, I look back really, and I think I was drinking probably more abnormally than most of my friends from an early age. Actually, I hadn't progressed at that stage, and
what early age? What is that? How old?
I was 16, probably 16, 17. I probably drank more, or more stuff happened to me when I was drinking. Then there's this sort of almost trouble. You attract trouble from nothing hideous, but more scrapes and hijinks and whatever. So I can remember.
Did you enjoy it? Did you
Yeah,
enjoy
yeah.
always being around you and you being, oh, Simon's doing this and Simon, and like, because you're fun and you're in, you're fun to be around.
I love drinking, and it was a lot of fun. But then the last 10 years of my drinking, uh, you associate drinking with fun. The last 10 years of my drinking wasn't a lot of fun, and the last 3 or 4 years, I had ceased to live and I was existing. I was literally, and I'll go into that. And there's a big difference between living and existing. And the last 2 years, I also didn't sleep, which you don't realize until you start. So I was literally passing out every night, uh, and that's not the same as good healthy sleep. So I think my drinking became probably more obvious to me and to Karen when she became, because Karen liked to drink as well, and she was quite sociable. But I would, we'd always drink on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday because that's the weekend. But then Thursday, I used to do a lot of the cooking, and Thursday I'd say, "Oh, I don't feel like cooking tonight. Should we go out for a meal?" And again, not consciously at the time, but I look back, I realised it's because I wanted to have a drink. And if we go out for a meal, we're going to get a taxi and we're going to have a meal. And then I might pop next door to borrow something on Wednesday because I know that they will offer me a drink if I go around. And then I'll say, well, it wasn't my fault. They gave me, 6 glasses of wine. My life became a series of making excuses so I could have a drink. I'd come back and pretend I'd make myself have a bad day at work so that I could come home and drink on it. Anyway, when Karen got pregnant with our youngest, sorry, our eldest, she stopped drinking. She's also working full time, so she used to come home. I'd cook her tea, and she'd go to bed quite early, sort of 7, 8 o'clock, because she's really tired. And alcoholics are not good in their own company, so I was then drinking by myself most evenings, and I wouldn't say I was hiding it particularly, but I wasn't telling her that I was drinking every evening. And then my drinking sort of took off a little bit, and then our first child was born, and um, she was difficult, a really difficult baby. And alcohol does give you a bit of energy to sort of, we were living in shifts really around that, which is not particularly healthy. Anyway, I ended up drinking more and more, and then Karen got pregnant with our second, and she came along, and by then I'd gone from being a heavy social drinker to an alcoholic. And so, like, how do you start morning drinking? Well, I think the first time would have been I was up with the kids, and about five, because we used to get up in shifts. So I'd get up, say, if one of them got up at 5:30, get up, deal with them for 2 hours, and then Karen would come and take over, and I'd go back to bed. So I would have been in the kitchen watching some rubbish on television with the kids giving some breakfast, and went to the fridge, half bottle of wine in there, and I'm thinking, well, I'm going back to bed in an hour. It's not really, it's still the night, really, isn't it? So I then started drinking most mornings at the weekend, and then insidiously it was pretty much every morning. And part of the disease, and I know some people have a problem with alcoholism being called a disease, and I'll kind of come on to that later. I don't think it matters whether it's a disease. It's a condition that basically gets worse over time. I know that if you call it disease, some people think that it gives you an excuse. Oh, it's not his fault. Yeah, it might not be on my fault. I'm an alcoholic, but everything I do under the influence of drink, I'm still responsible for. And it doesn't. I don't get a get out of jail free card because I'm an alcoholic. Anyway, so I I've kind of lost where I was then actually. So yeah, I remember waking up one morning, and I'd had about a bottle and a half of wine, and I remember thinking to myself, do you know what, Simon, this isn't normal. And here is the genius of denial. I instantly thought, if I was an alcoholic, I wouldn't think anything of this. So therefore, because I know it's wrong, I'm not an alcoholic. And I had a mantra. I used to say, I'm not an alcoholic because I don't drink every day. I don't drink spirits, and I don't drink in the morning. Well, by the end, I was drinking every day. I was drinking in the morning. I wasn't drinking spirits, but I'd do a bottle of wine in about 5 minutes. And by the end, I was on about 6 or 7 bottles of wine a day, because I was a posh drinker. And I'll go through my daily routine in a minute. So yeah, denial is an amazing thing. So yeah, my daily routine, I'd get up in the morning, and I have to say, by this point, uh, Karen's life was just shit because I wasn't any use. I couldn't be left with the kids. I couldn't. Not that I've done anything deliberate to them, but I wasn't in a fit state to look after them or anything. She'd stop me. I was drink driving all the time. She'd stop me driving with the kids, and I am ashamed of that, but it's true. That's what I did. And no normal person would do that deliberately, but I did.
On that
Anyway,
note,
so I would.
I was I've been to one of your talks, haven't I? You often go to
Yeah, yes.
churches and you deliver talks to
Yeah.
young dentists and doctors. A couple of questions. Why is alcoholism such a big thing within dentists and doctors? Well, it's because it's an alarming rate, isn't it? You're more likely to become an alcoholic if you are those professions.
I'm not sure that's particularly true. I think the stat is about 1 in 10 people. Um, Doctors and dentists perhaps have more capacity to be functional in the fact that they're so what happens, you basically drink until you get to your low point, whatever that point might be. And if you've got no money, you might get caught shoplifting because you're nicking alcohol, and that might be your low point. So you might, if you're a dentist or a doctor, and there is a heavy. You're right. There is a very heavy drinking culture associated with medical students and dental students, or there was. I'm not so sure it is the same anymore. And a certain amount of tolerance as well. So when I was at work, smelling of drink and stuff, and looking absolutely awful. Well, I had 2 young kids. They knew I wasn't sleeping. And actually, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, people did come to work, still hungover and still hanging, really. And it wasn't as much of an issue as it would have been today. So I think that the cultures as medical and dental students, um, in not so much dental students, but medical students coping with what they see and what they cope with. There's a certain coping mechanism of gallows humor comes into it, of drinking, of working hard and partying hard, and that becomes almost a badge of honor. And so I think that's one of the reasons behind it. I also imagine that being a GP, especially, is one of the most depressing jobs in the world because I've told you this before. I think mental illness is catching, and if you're dealing with people, and I would say a lot of the people who end up seeing GPs on a regular basis, because they deal with the same patients again and again. Mostly, it's mental health, depression, and other associated things. And in dealing with these people, it's very, very difficult not to become depressed yourself. It's like being around negative people the whole time. So I think there are certain pressures that make it more so. I don't know whether the stats hold up that it's worse. Certainly in my group in AA, that there is a diverse range of occupations and incomes and backgrounds and educational standards that there's no one that sits is more obvious than others. But about 1 in 10 people have some sort of addiction problem, and the recovery rate from alcoholism is about 2%. It's about 10% if you go to AA. So it's still not great in AA. I've over the years I've seen lots of people come in and leave, but very few kind of stick it out. And I wouldn't have bet on myself, I have to say. I've never stuck any kind of evening class or whatever, and I only went kicking and screaming really to please Karen. My plan was I was going to go for about 6 weeks and then say, "Oh no, they just said that I'm functional. I just need to sort myself out and it'll be all right," kind of thing.
So
And somehow I managed to
before we talk about the AA, I want to go back to that point.
yeah.
You mentioned a thing about, and I said that I heard you say this on your talk a few years ago to the young dentist. You said like, and you mentioned it just then, so I'm not saying anything you haven't said, but you used to drive with your 2 children back in the car whilst intoxicated. I know you're a wonderful person, and I know you're a fantastic dentist and a brilliant, brilliant dad that cares for his children so, so much. And I'd be remiss if I wasn't asking this question because some people might be thinking this. How can somebody who loves his children so much drive his kids in the car drunk? How does that happen?
I was mentally ill. I think alcoholism is a three-part disease, where it's physical. So I was physically addicted to alcohol. I was mentally ill, and I'll go through some of the thought processes that in a daily basis that will demonstrate that. And spiritually, I was bereft, and I didn't understand. People used to talk about this when I first went to AA. They talk about a spiritual existence, and I didn't understand it at all. And I was just bereft spiritually. So yeah, I not only did I drink drive with the kids, I did it with malice aforethought because Karen knew that I would never drink drive with the kids. So I was driving with the kids to prove that I hadn't been drinking because she knew I would never put the kids in danger. So that's even worse. Anyway, so thankfully she stopped me driving with the kids, and thankfully nothing, I didn't kill them, anyone else, or myself. I wasn't so bothered about myself, to be honest. By the end, I did realize that actually everyone's life would be a lot easier if I just didn't wake up. But I didn't have the desire or the courage to kill myself. But yeah, I mean, life was pretty dire at the end. I mean, so my my daily routine: get up, drink between a bottle and a half of wine, cycle to work because Karen had sort of stopped me driving really, She didn't think she was unaware I was drinking in the morning, actually, I have to say. And I dump a lot of bottles to hide the evidence on the way into work. And there are bushes in our village that still jingle in the wind. Bottles on the way to work all over the place because you can't just put them in a bin because someone will notice if you put them in a bin. Anyway, so I'd go to work. Sometimes I'd top up at lunchtime, sometimes I wouldn't, and then I'd cycle back and I'd cycle to Tesco's and I'd buy 2 cans of wine and some cheese or some batteries. Because you can't just buy 2 cans of wine because everyone know you're an alcoholic. And I'd go to a different checkout person, not that they care, and I'd put my 2 cans of wine and my cheese or my batteries down, and I'd have a conversation with an uninterested checkout girl. So yeah, I've got to buy these 2 cans of wine because my wife's making sauce for the, and they don't care, but you have to act like you're not an alcoholic. So I'd down one of the cans in the car park and one.
Are you trying to convince yourself? Are you trying to when you talk to a Czech girl or boy? Are you trying to tell yourself?
Chaplin once said, if you want to play someone who's drunk, then act sober because that's what drunk people do. And so you spend your life acting. Your whole life is a lie. You act sober. You act caring. And all through my life, I've been looking back. I didn't really, I don't think, experience emotions until I stopped drinking. I knew how to react emotionally to get what I wanted. So I could do remorse, I could do happy, I could do sad, and there was always a motive behind it. And then again, not conscious, just looking back, I think, oh, yeah, as a teenager, I was really moody, and I used to try and get sympathy from girls and be upset, and I'd go out with someone, be horrible to them because I was bored. They'd bin me, and then I'd be like, oh, I've been binned, I can't believe it, and so it was all manipulative behaviour. So again, I don't know whether it's trying to convince himself. Probably is some of that, but convincing everyone else. A friend of mine, he used to do the same thing. He said his wife came to visit him. He's working in Brighton, and she went to the fridge, and it was full of cheese, and he doesn't eat cheese because he said every time he bought alcohol, you have to buy cheese, and so it's completely nothing else in there, just cheese. And she's looking at him like he's a complete nutter, which obviously he was. Then I'd come home and I'd say to Karen, because she'd been at home with the kids and they were young and it's tiring. I said, I'll take them to Tesco's, you have a bath or whatever. So I'd take the kids to Tesco's, drive there, um, buy whatever we were going to have for tea, buy 6 or 7 bottles of wine, and 2 cans as well. And then sometimes I'd get the checkout and I'd pay for the shopping first and the wine separately, and that really winds me up when people do that in front of me now. But so and that if I did that, I'd leave the receipt out because Karen would check the receipt to show that I haven't bought any wine. I would drink a can of wine in the car park and a can of wine halfway home, and then I'd drive to the side of the house. I'd get out and I'd unload the bottles to the back of the kitchen door. I'd then drive around the front, unload the shopping. Very obviously, no drink here. And then Karen would go and bath the kids, and I'd get the wine in the back, and then I'd take 2 hours to cook chicken and mashed potato or something like that, and think that I'd got away with drinking and Karen wouldn't know. I used to live on Alba soil, so I'd coat myself in Alba soil because that's the only thing that hides the smell. People say, oh, if you drink vodka, you can't smell it. That's rubbish. You can smell it because it just sweats out of you. So I lived on airwaves chewing gum and Alba soil to hide the smell. So that was my kind of daily routine, really, and it was worse at weekends. And then I think it came to a head in 2001. My dad died, and I got a phone call in the middle of the night. It was my sister-in-law, and she said, "Ever so sorry to tell you, your dad's died." And I love my dad, and I was really close to him. And I was in shock for a microsecond, and then my next thought was, "Fucking great! I can drink on this for about 3 weeks. I reckon I can drink what I like for 3 weeks." And that's a horrible thing to say. So I immediately said, "Oh, I've got to go to Birmingham." So I went to Birmingham, left the kids. Karen was like, "Well, am I not coming?" No, no, no. I've got stuff to sort out, and I just wanted to drink by myself. So I went there, then came back, and then took them there. Karen said my drinking got worse after my dad died. I don't think it did. I think I just hid. I just stopped hiding it as much. And it sort of now chronologically, my chronology is a bit. I, I wouldn't say that I was in blackout, but I'm not quite clear exactly what happened. Anyway, Karen had had enough, and she'd been going to a group called Al-Anon, which is an amazing group. It's a counselling group for people involved in a relationship with someone who is like me, who is drinking too much and making their life.
Were you aware she was around there?
Yeah, she used to go, and I got so fucking annoyed. How dare she go and talk about my problem, which, by the way, I haven't got. And of course, she wasn't talking about my problems. She was talking about her problems in living with me. And mental illness will affect. Alcoholism. They say an alcoholic will affect the lives of 10 people around him deeply, and I certainly did that. At work, it was either party or funeral kind of atmosphere, and my mood swings were unbelievable. I don't know how. It must have been awful to work with. I stopped caring really. I didn't. Just didn't care. People would come in with toothache or whatever, and I'm like, gosh, you had my life, you wouldn't be fucking income to me. And I'm supposed to be in a caring profession, and I didn't care. Anyway, Karen through AA, through Al-Anon, she gave me an ultimatum, and she said, you've got 2 weeks to start doing something about this. And she came to see me at work, and I was pissed, and she sent me home, and she phoned my boss and told him that she'd sent me home because I was pissed. I was really fucking annoyed about that as well. And he was wonderful about it. He had a lot more faith in me than I did, to be fair. But that was the point. I went home and I was thinking, God, this is great. I can drink all day if I don't work. And she came home. She gave me the ultimatum. She said, "You've got 2 weeks to start doing something about this, or you've got to go. I can't have you around the kids." And she meant it. And she'd been to Al-Anon, and they said, "You've got to give an ultimatum. But if you give an ultimatum, you have to mean it. You can't keep giving ultimatums." So she said, you've got 2 weeks to do something about it, or you're out. And I don't particularly remember getting it, but I remember anyway. The next morning, I planned not to go to work. I said, no, I'm too embarrassed to go to work because blah blah blah. And she said, no, you've got to go. And because I'd already planned, I was going to spend the day, I was going to drink all morning and then sober up in the afternoon and pretend I hadn't drunk. And that, I think that was, I was at the edge of a cliff then. If I'd done that, I don't think I'd have gone back to work. So she said, no, you've got to go to work. So I didn't drink that day, and I went to work. And then I began withdrawal from alcohol, which is physically and mentally by far the hardest thing I've ever done. Because when I stopped drinking, I had been shit faced for 6 months, 24 hours a day, just existing, not living. Just the only thing I cared about was how, and it's people say it must be great fun to be pissed for 6. It's not. It's so stressful because you have to work out where you can hide your drinks. You have to,
An operation, isn't it? Operation when you're
yeah. So you have to hide them. You have to wake up in the morning, try and remember where you've hidden them. And I used to wake up in the morning, and the first thing I do is have a look around and see if I'm in bed with Karen or if I'm in the spare room. If I'm in the spare room, I have to work out what I've done that's made me in the spare room and how I can apologize for it without letting on that I don't know what I've done, because I can't admit that I don't know what I've done because I'm pretending I only had 2 glasses of wine or wasn't drunk and I was just tired actually. And I can remember I stormed off to the spare room once, and we'd had this argument that was, and I'd got all these reasons why I was right, and I wrote them down, and I woke because I knew I wasn't going to remember in the morning. I woke up, and there was just this pile of gibberish I was looking at, like, what on earth are you talking about? Because when you're an alcoholic, you have all these imagined slights. So you think people are after you, you're paranoid, you're so sensitive, you're hypersensitive to everything. You're looking for an argument. So I stopped drinking, and I went through 10 days of 10 days to 2 weeks of just physical, the most uncomfortable 2 weeks of my life. My resting pulse rate was 180. You can feel these ectopic beats all the time, so you feel like, and it is. Doctors say it is dangerous to stop drinking, and it is, but it's not as dangerous as carrying on drinking. And of course, the problem with people like me is you can't really cut down because the only choice I have is not to take the first drink. If I take the first drink, the 12th drink is inevitable. I can choose not to take the first drink, and that's all I can do on a daily basis. Once I've taken the first drink, then I'm gone. So yeah, resting pulse rate 180, sweating profusely, no chance of sleeping. Although I guess I must have slept, but it's like being plugged into the mains. Hypersensitive hearing, banging headache, and all the time there's a little devil on you thinking, just, I can make this go away, have a drink. And I kept busy really. I went to work. I didn't drink, and it's a mirror. I don't know. Obviously, it was to do with Karen and the kids and wanting to do that. And my dad was involved in it a little while, and I didn't want to drink. I did want to drink. I wanted to drink desperately, but I didn't, and I stopped. And after about 2 weeks, I started to feel more human again. And then after about 3 weeks, I realised I'd lost about a stone and a half in 2 weeks, because the amount of calories you're getting from the amount that I was drinking was immense. So I started to feel kind of physically the best I'd felt, because I could feel my liver for 2 years. Everything hurt. In the morning, you get up and I have to have a drink, but I'm throwing up the first 2 or 3 mouthfuls. So you have to fight to keep it down, because you need to have it to function. But you're being sick because of it. So waking up in the morning without a hangover and feeling great, and that's when I realised I hadn't slept for 2 years, was because suddenly I was sleeping and it was fucking wonderful. So at that point I still wanted to drink all the time, and Karen made me go to AA. And as I said, my plan was to go there about 6 weeks and then come back and say, no, they say I'm a functioning alcoholic. You just need to nag a little bit less, because obviously it was all Karen's fault, and let me get on with it and I'll be fine. But I went, and a series of miracles happened, really. The first was I walked into the room, um, and two of my patients were in there, and I didn't turn around and leave. I don't know why, because I saw them and I thought, well, do you know what? Fuck it. They've seen me walk in. They're going to see me walk out. It's not like they're not going to know what, no one goes to an AA meeting by accident. So I walked in, and I sat there for the first 6 weeks. I didn't really say anything, but I loved it. I was blown away by these people being really honest. I thought someone had been following me. They're all telling my story, but with just different geography. I thought they're making this up. But I loved the stories. I loved the honesty, and I quite enjoyed going. And I didn't have any problem actually saying my name's Simon and I'm an alcoholic, because I've been lying the whole of my life. So I didn't really believe it, but I said it just to fit in, because that was my whole life of fitting in places. Uh, anyway, I sort of stopped for about 3 months, and then I knew I was going to drink again. But I'd said to Karen, if I drink again, I'll just go to a hotel somewhere. I won't drink drive with the kids. I won't nothing I did before I'll do. I'll just occasionally perhaps have one. And I chose the worst time. Karen went away on a sister's hen do, and I ended up driving. We had to go to a funeral in St Helens. I drove back to Birmingham. The kids were with my mum. I picked the kids up, and my mum came back to stay with me. And my mum didn't know any of this at the time. I hadn't told her. So in my head, I said, right, if we get back to Lowestoft by 9 o'clock, I'll have a drink with my mum, and that'll be fine. Anyway, traffic was terrible. We got back at midnight, and I'd moved the goalposts by then, and so I had a bottle of wine when I got back. But woke up the next day, was fine, went to work, no problem. And then in the program, they talk about handing things over to a higher power. So Karen's mum had obviously knew all about this, because Karen had been talking to her about it. I said, right, if I'll invite Dorothy for tea with my mum. If she comes, I won't drink. If she doesn't come, I will drink with my mum. And she didn't come, because she fucking hated me. But at that point, the amount of stuff I'd put her daughter through. So I had a drink with my mum, but no, nothing unbelievable. A couple of bottles of wine between us. I woke up the next morning, shit faced. I have no idea the thought process that made me want to drink in the morning. And Karen phoned me up, and I'd only had a sip of wine when she phoned up, and she said hello, and I only said hello, and I wasn't slurring. She went, "You've been drinking." She's like a witch. So I completely ruined her stag do, her hen do with her sister, because she was worried about what I was doing. I ended up drink driving with the kids again. Everything I said I wouldn't do, I did, and by the end, and I was as bad. I drank 6 bottles of wine that Saturday. So within 2 days, I was as bad as I'd been at the end. So I stopped again, and had a little bit of a withdrawal, but nothing like the previous one. And I went back to AA with a sort of fresh. But I kind of knew anyway that I was, but I thought, okay, I better do something about this. And then so I engaged in the program a bit more, the program of recovery, and because it's not. And what I now realise is that I didn't have a drink problem. I had a me problem that I tried to control by drinking. I tried to cope with being me by drinking heavily. And then I lost control of that drinking. So you go in there and you stop drinking, and you have to learn how to be you, and you have to learn how to deal with that. And so they give you a toolbox, and the program is part of that on how to deal with life. Because if you don't change the person that comes into the rooms, that person will take you out. Because my disease of alcoholism is out
Say
in
that
the
again,
corridor.
please. So that was really you brushed past that. Can you say that again? That was really powerful. If you don't change the person that comes into the room,
Yeah. So if you don't change the person that comes into the room, that person will take you back out again. And people say to me, "What, I still,
life isn't. That's not just drinking.
yeah."
That's everything. That's everything we go through.
I think Muhammad Ali said, if you're the same person you are at 50 as you were at 20, then you've wasted 30 years of your life. So life is about learning, and so with the help of the wonderful people in AA, I've learned how to. Well, sorry, I am still learning because I can still be an arsehole. It doesn't like, when I sulk, it only lasts for about 5 minutes these days. It used to last for 4 days. And So yeah, some of the mad thoughts I was so after 6 months in the rooms again, I realised I was totally fucking mental, and I had to do something about that. So I engaged more thoroughly in the program, and the program is mostly it's about being honest with yourself. So if I go,
It must be really hard to do at that point in your life when you're that low. It must be really hard to look in the mirror and say. You mentioned like, did you like yourself back then?
No, no, really. Well, it's hard to say because I've always loved myself. Really, I've always thought I'm a bit special. But no, at that point, I didn't. And looking back now, it's like looking at someone else. So I tell these stories with a certain amount of detachment because I'm not sure I believe that it was me. And whether that's something in my mind that's changed, I look back and it is a different person, and I can't believe the stuff I did. I can't believe the danger I put my kids in. I can't believe the danger I put everyone else in. I can't believe how sensitive I was, how I used to get upset by the most stupid things. Like, so if I if I walked into a room and two people who I don't even know particularly are having a discussion about something, and I disagreed with something they were saying, I would have to put them right. I would have to tell them what I think, why they were wrong, and why I'm better than them. Now I've realised it's none of my fucking business. So if I hear, the other day I was in Valentine's, just get changed, and there were two people who were training for a marathon. They'd never run a marathon before, and they were talking about running a marathon and giving each other advice, and they were both talking bollocks. And I'm literally almost sitting on my hands trying not to get involved in their conversation, because the only reason I want to get involved is so I can say, well, by the way, I've done 38 marathons, blah blah blah, and all this, and I'm really good, and you should respect my opinion. And it's really got nothing to do with me. And they're both fit, and they'll both learn. They'll be fine. But I still want to. I just now know who owns the problem, not me. It's nothing to do with me. Is it affecting me? If they go and run a marathon with the training they're talking about, they're just going to have a bad day. They're still going to finish. I'm sure they are.
So you mentioned then you said you want to because blah, 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 you tell them your opinion because you're better than them. That's what you said.
Yes.
Do you still feel like you're better than people?
Uh, yeah, but that's just my arrogance and I sort of I say that tongue in cheek, but I still probably believe it a little bit. But I think you have to love yourself a little bit. But no, I realise I sound a complete arrogant wanker saying that, and so I don't. I'm not as good as I think I am, and I'm not as bad as I pretend to be. I think some of the things that comes across. So no, my kids are all much brighter than me, and that's the way it should be. And I don't argue, especially the middle one, Emily. I don't argue. She's a lawyer. She's going to be a lawyer. Don't argue with her because she will argue. Black is white and win. So I've learned to stay away from certain arguments, and I've learned that my opinion doesn't matter, because I might be wrong. That's the other thing. So whereas up until 35, I was never wrong. Well, I was once in 1973 when I thought I made a mistake, but I didn't. And I used to think all of my thoughts. It's when people say it's just my opinion, and they'll come out with something, or I'm not racist, and then say something ultimately racist. Your opinion, if it's not kind and it's not helpful, probably keep it to yourself. I think Dennis Thatcher said it's better to keep your mouth shut and be thought an idiot than to open it and prove it. And I kind of think of that sometimes, that I just actually sometimes don't comment. When the kids were growing up, because like I say, I stopped drinking when my youngest was 2, so they don't really know me as a drinker. They've never really seen it. They've had also lifelong taxi of dad. So that's one of the benefits, is that when they're stuck somewhere at 3 in the morning, I can go and pick them up, and I might be a little bit annoyed by it, but I'd rather go and pick them up than leave them. So they've had that advantage. Um, I mean, I would say that is the factor that keeps me sober. I mean, also I now know that there is no situation that would happen to me that drinking is going to make better. Anything that happens to me, a drink is not the answer.
Mate, thank you so much for all of that. You mentioned it earlier, and we talked. We touched upon alcoholism. Is it a disease? What are your thoughts on alcoholism or addiction? Is addiction a disease like a cancer or
I personally believe that it is, but the disease is just a word. I think if you can all agree, it is a condition that some people are susceptible to, because there are a lot of people who drink heavily who never progress to becoming alcoholics. So it's a condition that gets worse over time. I think most people accept that. I personally believe that there is a genetic element to it. But I'm hoping it's more the nurture bit. So you live in the environment of that, you're much more likely to become the thing that you hate. Even the abused becomes the abuser, kind of thing. But I do believe that I think that they will in time be able to find some gene that is more susceptible to addiction. There are certainly addiction centers in the brain that seem to be more active in some people. But I think the word is I don't think it matters. Using the word disease is emotive, because some people, because if you've got cancer, that's definitely a disease. People, it's not your fault. If you're alcoholic, you seem to be excusing behavior because it's not your fault. And I'm not saying that's true. I think, if you kill someone and you're drunk driving, you're to blame. It's not the alcoholism, because you had the choice not. On a daily basis, I have a choice not to take a drink. I'm still alcoholic. I'm still mental, but I have a toolbox now to allow me to deal with my crazy thoughts. And I sometimes, we call it the washing machine head. You suddenly get thoughts that go round and round and round. And just a minor instance, I buy something, it's faulty, I've got to take it back. On the way there, I've decided that they're not going to accept this back, that I'm going to have to go to court, that I'm going to lose the initial court thing. I'm going to be at the European Court of Human Rights fighting this. By the time I get to the shop, in my head, we have gone to all the different courts in the land fighting my injustice. And I go and I say, I bought this other that doesn't work. They go, okay, do you want another one, or do you want money back? And I'm like, no, 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 no. I wanted the argument. So some part of me craves the chaos. Um, Driving, you can see someone, he's going to pull out in front of me, he's going to pull out in front of me, what also, he's going to pull out in front, and he doesn't pull out in front of you, and you've had three, I don't know, 20 seconds of angst thinking something's not going to happen. So yeah, I need to work on my mad head, basically, and AA gives me the tools to try and do that. And it's not, we don't seek spiritual perfection, we seek improvement, really, every day. And I try and learn, and I still get things massively wrong, and I can still be an absolute twat. My nurses will say to me, have you been to AA recently? If I start to get annoyed by stupid things. So, like, sometimes if I'm in Tesco's, and I find this quite funny, if I'm in, you can get annoyed in the queue in Tesco's. If the guy in front of me is getting really annoyed in the queue, I'll find it really funny. But I also know that I can be that guy. I can be, so I will laugh at him being a complete tool, knowing that I am that close to being that man. And so they talk about how you pray for things. So say I'm very impatient, so I have to pray to be given patience. And what you find is, of course, you don't just get actively given it. Halfway through a situation where I'm being impatient, I will realize I've been given an opportunity to practice patience and learn from it. And that's what you need to do, is to practice these things. Now, whether there's a higher power behind all this, I don't know.
like you mentioned earlier, mate? It starts within you. No one's going to say to you, "Bosh, patience," but by saying it, by praying for it, you're more aware of it. Then you get into a position where you can display it, or practice it. Mate, when it's funny because when you talk, I've wanted to say this for 3 times now and I haven't, but we have so many similarities. It's unbelievable. It was the patience. It was the lack of patience thing that made me think. I'm going to say it now. There's so many similarities, and when you talk, it was one of the reasons we get on so well because like you're almost talking my story, different obviously, like different geography as you mentioned earlier, but very very similar. And I think a lot of people, I hope a lot of people listening to this will feel the same as well. Their story, different mouth and different experiences. Mal, wow. What? So, two couple questions. AA, is it just for alcoholics, or can other people go? Because this is a place where, like, as I mentioned earlier, I regret not going with you a few years ago because I could have got a lot of benefit from this. So yeah.
I think the program of AA could, and I can read it out to you. There's 12 would benefit most people because step one is a thing about alcohol or whatever. Insert your drug of choice or whatever your addiction problem is, and the rest of the steps are all the same. So most people would benefit from following that anyway. But so most AA meetings are what are called closed meetings, which are basically anyone who thinks they've got a drink problem is welcome to attend. Sometimes they have an open meeting where you can bring anyone along, and it's declared as an open meeting at the beginning of the meeting. So if people don't want to, because most alcoholics actually aren't as open as me, they are the anonymous bit, and they don't tell anyone.
Mm.
So they might not want to share if it's an open meeting. If people who aren't sort of bought into this, you don't discuss what other people talk about in AA, or you don't, because you go, oh, I heard this, it was amazing, blah blah blah. So anyone can go to an open meeting. So if I was to take you to a meeting, which you're quite welcome to come to any time you're in Lowestoft, give me a bell, I'll find a meeting and take you. I would, because I know most of the people, I would just go in before the meeting and say, is it okay if I bring a friend? And we make this an open meeting. And they'll probably say yes. They just have a quick head count. Anyone who doesn't want to say it, and that would be fine. If you are in a relationship with someone who is a drinker, then Al-Anon is the organization that needs to help you, and they will help you deal. Karen said it was like learning to love with detachment, and she's because the other thing is alcoholics are very controlling and very manipulative. So Karen, I basically convinced Karen that one, it wasn't as bad as she thought it was, and most of my friends, to be honest, they live in denial as well. So when Karen was saying it's really bad, they're going, "Oh, he's always been a drinker," people make excuses for you. So Karen thought she was going mad. She went to Al-Anon, and they went, "No, you're not going mad. This is all what alcoholics do. They make you feel that it's your fault somehow." And again, it wasn't deliberate, but obviously that's what I was doing. I was undermining her confidence. So yeah, so Al-Anon is for that, and Alateen is for teenagers going through similar things. So if their parents, or if you're a parent who's got a teenager going through, then you go to Alateen. And there are similar groups. So Narcotics Anonymous, I think Families Anonymous is the drug related. If you're in a relationship or a family member is a drug problem, you go to Families Anon. There's Gamblers Anonymous and Gam-Anon, I think, are the same things because they're all pretty much the behaviours are the same. The consequences of being addicted to tobacco isn't quite as bad as being addicted to alcohol, but the sort of behaviours can be the same around it. Shopping, eating, all these things, they all have their own help groups, and they all pretty much use the 12-step program. Now there are other methods. I think there's the Alan Carr method, not the comedian, but there's I think it's, and that works for some people. Some people go by controlled drinking. That would never have worked for me. But I can't say, because AA is only a 10% success rate. It's not, it, but that's 5 times more than 2% who recover without. So yeah, there are other things out there, but for me, AA and abstinence was the only thing. And as I say, it's only, I don't have to drink today. That's all I need to do. Can't worry about tomorrow.
In a moment, it's had a guy called Ash Dykes on. Ash Dykes is an adventure explorer. He set three first time. He set three world first records, done things that no man's ever done before, and his whole thing is taking the next step. He couldn't when he trekked the Yangtze River, the third longest river in the world, goes all through China. he couldn't fathom the how gargantuan the size of the task was. He couldn't think of it. He had to all he could think of the next step, the next step, the next step, and eventually you get to the first your first checkpoint, then the next one, then the next one, and that sounds like that doesn't anything really. Like you haven't got to think about the whole way. You just think of the next step or the day you're in and look after that day. I had an old strength and conditioning coach, my first S&C coach, Chris Roberts, a wonderful man from Norwich. I've got to get him on the podcast one day. One of the most inspirational men I've ever met. We used to obviously teach me like weights and to get stronger and fitter and healthier. But also I was like 16, 17. But also each lesson was like each session was like a mind a mind session as well. And one quote he said was, "If you got one foot in tomorrow and one foot in yesterday, then you're pissing on today." And I thought, and that's always stuck with me. It's always stuck with me. And it's like
Yeah.
the worry, when you think about tomorrow, you're worrying. When you think about yesterday, like you're panicking about, you're anxious about the future, depressed about the past. All we've got is today. And focus on the day and then do the same thing the next day and the next day. And then before you know it, like you said, before you know it, you're now 23 years
Yeah.
sober almost. And that's by looking after the one day that you're in. Mate, this has been such an amazing conversation, and one thing I do want to touch upon before we wrap up is fitness. You mentioned on 38 marathons. How much has it saved you to a degree?
Yeah. I think yes. I think the answer is yes. Although if I become as obsessed with running and fitness as I was with drinking, I would have been at your level of performance. I think it's actually I said 30. Yeah, I think it's 37 marathons, and I know if I don't correct that, Karen will have a go because she's trying to catch me up in the number that she's done, and she will eventually do it because I can't run anymore. But yeah, undoubtedly that's helped. Just the training, the sort of the meditation when you're running, the mental discipline, I think, to actually train for marathons, to train for I've done Ironman triathlons as well, and again that's part of my addictive personality. I ended up doing my first triathlon in 2009, and a couple of my friends did the Blenheim Sports Triathlon, a married couple, good friend from Birmingham, and they wrote a really funny article about doing this marathon. So, sorry, about doing the triathlon. So I thought, oh, that sounds quite good because I'm quite a good swimmer. So Karen and I signed up to do the Blenheim Triathlon the next year, and it's a sprint one, so it's a 750-meter swim, 20k bike, and a 5k run. It's only a little thing, and I did that. As soon as I finished that, I decided I was going to do an Ironman. That's just I said, right, I'm going to do an Ironman, and I thought, right, I'll do this in. So I signed up. That Fritton had just started doing Olympic triathlon, so I signed up for that, and I looked online for the UK Ironman, and I spoke to a couple of friends who'd done them. They said, don't do UK Ironman because it's really difficult. But I looked, and the entry was just open the day I opened because I was planning. I thought, well, I'll do it in 2 years' time. I'll work up to it, and then I thought, no, that's too long for me. So I just entered there, and then I did the UK Ironman that less than 9 months after the first triathlon I'd done. I'd done a few marathons by then, so it wasn't such a massive leap. I mean, biking is just biking, really, although it is a long way. But yeah, it helps. The mindset of AA of what you said, doing things in steps. So you do the swim, then you do the bike, then you do the run. You don't halfway through the bike think, oh, now I've got to do a marathon at the end of this. You just do the bike, you get off the bike, and then you do however many laps it is. And so yeah, that's that mindset definitely helped me. And also because then Karen took up running and turned out she was an amazingly good runner. We've been all over the world, and we used to go and do races quite regularly, and that was our thing. We'd get away for a weekend and go and do a marathon in wherever, New York, Berlin, wherever. Karen's done all the major marathons now. So that used to be our thing. Now it still is, in that she does the marathon. I just go along and watch now, which I find difficult because it's not all about me. So, but that used to annoy Karen because, and I think it's annoyed Karen because Karen would go along and do an amazing time, and people they'd just go, yeah, but that's Karen, she's just amazing. Oh, Simon, you did really well doing 4.5 hours for a fat bloke. You're really good, and I would get lots of credit for doing a fairly mediocre time, whereas everyone goes, yeah, but it's just Karen. And I remember talking to there's a local runner, a guy called Carl Pruer. He's a really good runner, and he used to do 5k in about 16 minutes, And he said, what people don't really see, when I do a thing, they just assume that it's a God-given talent. He said, they don't realise halfway through the 5K, I want to be sick. I want to stop. I don't want to do it. He said, I just happen to be doing it quicker than most people. And it's the same for Karen. You know, she does the 3:12 marathon, but it's difficult. And she does it because she goes out and does lots of 20-mile runs before. I didn't do that so much. I sort of just winged it quite a lot, and just used to complete rather than compete. But yeah, that's definitely helped to fill the void, I think, because that's the other thing is you realise how much time your drinking takes up and how much effort. So stopping that, I mean, yeah, because the other thing is I used to think, oh, if it wasn't for this, I'd be playing rugby. If it wasn't for this, and I'd put obstacles in my way and blame everyone else for me not doing things. I always wanted to write children's books, and so I stopped drinking. I wrote a couple of children's books. They're not very good. I got some interest from an agent, but they didn't get published. That's okay. They didn't stand up to scrutiny, but I did it. It wasn't anyone else's fault that so I did them, and they didn't go anywhere, but I didn't stop myself doing them. And it's okay that they weren't very good. That's I can live with that as well. But before, I had a masterpiece that was waiting to come out.
Yeah.
Actually, the story was as yet undecided, but I could have done that. I would have been, J.K. Rowling if I'd tried. Whereas now I have tried and I'm not. So, well, that's okay. I can live with that.
Yeah. Mate, Simon, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful conversation. You've spoken so eloquently and humbly and honestly. That's the main thing. Like you've said it as is. I've done this podcast actually a few times with people, haven't released this episode yet. We've had a conversation, then we've wrapped up and I've finished. And then afterwards, they've been like, oh, like the true colours have come out. And it's like you've just not lied, you've just shown the side of you that's not actually really you. And I never understood that one. But I won't release those ones because it's not honest. There's some really good ones as well, but then they're not honest. And I've just loved how honest you've been, mate. Honestly, it's just been really, really inspiring. As I said, and as I've said, mate, you've really, really, really inspired me. And I know people would listen to this and be equally inspired. Anything in closing that you'd like to say, or
just to reiterate, whether it's cancer or alcohol, if you think you're in trouble with alcohol, there is hope at the end of it. My life is wonderfully fulfilling now, and I never imagined I could live without drink. And my life is, they say you have a life beyond your wildest dreams. Well, my dreams are less wild than they used to be, but my life's sometimes a bit dull and a bit boring, but that's lovely. It's nice and it's steady. I have a loving family around me who I definitely would have lost those. I mean, I'd have been dead actually. So there is hope out there, and also if you've got symptoms or anything else, just go and get them checked out, please, because one, it's probably nothing, and two, if it is, the earlier you get it, the easier it's dealt with.
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you so much. You're an absolute legend.
Thank you.
That was wow, that gets better every time I listen to it. Simon, what a wonderful guy you are. I said it at the beginning, you are an absolute legend, mate, and I think the world of you. I bloody love you. You are just a wonderful guy. And Karen, she's the true hero in your story, and I think you'd also agree. What wonderful people you are. That was a bit longer than normal, but it was such a fascinating conversation. I couldn't really take anything out. So I'm going to keep this nice and short. Simon, you're a star. Look, we all go through stuff in life. We all go through setbacks and suffering. And as you know, I often say, the bigger your dreams are, the more life happens to you. The more ups and downs and twists and turns you face, the more times you face yourself lying flat back on your back or on the seat of your pants, looking up at the lights after life is just giving you a big right hand or a big left hook. And as Rocky Balboa says, nobody, you or me, nobody hits as hard as life. But it's not about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forwards. I love those words. That quote has been said time and time again by me and by many others, and it will keep being said time and time and again because it's an amazing quote. It's so true. Life is going to hit you so hard. Most of the time you're not going to be ready for it. Simon was hit hard. The alcoholism, the cancer diagnosis. There's loads of things we didn't even have time to talk about. Well, there's loads of things we did talk about, but we had to kind of like cut out because his story is a magnificent story. But it's not about the alcoholism or the cancer. It's about you and the strength of who you are. And I truly believe everybody listening to this, they're strong and they're more powerful than they could ever imagine. Sometimes we only know how strong we are when we're forced to be strong. Sometimes we only know how deep we can dig when we're forced to dig. Don't be afraid to dig. Sometimes you've got to dig. And just know that you can dig way deeper than you think you can when you really, really have to. Boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. We're back next week with another inspiring guest. So until then, take care, look after yourself. If you go down, remember, always get back up, and I'll see you next week.